And then with performance, generally speaking, we're talking about physical performance in the health and fitness world. That's what people prioritize. They're like, I want to increase strength, I want to increase speed, power, skill acquisition, whatever it is. They're looking for some sort of performance, whether it's sporting, whether it's, just in the gym, they want to be a bit stronger, or fitter or whatever it is. They're looking for some sort of metrics for performance that are related to physical output, we'll call it, right? But there are obviously other components of performance as well, and that could be mental performance. And what I mean by this is both mental performance in terms of, we'll call it cognitive ability, but also in terms of how you perform day to day. And there's a few aspects of that. We can, use work as a proxy for that. And you can be like, oh, am I actually able to switch on for, you're working for whatever, 8 hours per day. Am I actually able to switch on for those 8 hours per day, right? And if you're not, we can manipulate some variables to try to get better mental performance that are both related to, training things. Like, for example, if you have a really hard work day and you're like, I'm really busy this day, and you normally train before work, I'm not going to get you to do fucking 10 high intensity sprints on an Airdyne or an Echo bike. That would be the worst, Like, you're literally going to be dealing with that fucking acidosis and trying to buffer that out, that fatigue, that central and peripheral fatigue for the next fucking 6 hours. So you're going to feel like you're fucking throwing up every 20 minutes, or just at least internally, you're going to feel like that. So we're not going to maximize mental performance that day as a result of the training session we did. So there's different things that we can do training wise to encourage and improve mental performance, right? But especially nutrition wise and lifestyle wise, there's different things that we can do to improve mental performance. And again, this is obviously really relevant if you have other goals that you want to prioritize, such as, oh, I want to, get better pay. I want to get better educated on a certain topic. Like, one of the things, and Gary, you'll definitely be able to speak to this because I know yourself and I have both gone through this, but especially relevant for what you're doing now and also what you'll be doing in the future with medicine. Like, people look to doctors to really maximize their mental performance, but then ask them to do the exact opposite habits that would lead to better mental performance. They're like, oh, we're going to get you to sleep on a fucking rotation, no circadian rhythm whatsoever, and that's, you could be on call for fucking 2 days, you could be up and down schedules, and, it's not stuff that you would do to maximize performance. And again, that's not even touching on the nutritional stuff where you're kind of like, oh yeah, I have 20 minutes here, if even, to grab a fucking bite to eat while also catching up on the sleep that I didn't get last night, So what I view mental performance, generally what I'm looking at that is not just cognitive ability. I'm looking at it as the ability to live vigorously every day. I don't want to just fucking coast through life like, oh yeah, great, whatever, because there's two things for that. First of all, you're probably not giving your most to the other things that you have goals towards, education, family, whatever, but also just your day-to-day interaction with everyone is just probably going to be negative as a result if you're just not cognitively there, if you're just not able to give to other people, because your stress resilience is probably very close to zero. So if someone says something even just mildly annoying, you're gonna fuck off, like, you're not going to be your best self. And I've said this before, especially in relation to nutrition, like, do you think you are at your best self when you're hungry? Most people would say no, right? Now, you might be a little bit more resilient to that. Like, if you've practiced something like fasting, for example, and you don't have fucking any degree of insulin resistance and whatever else, if you're in a position where you're like, it doesn't really matter, I'm quote unquote fat adapted, I'm in a position where I can just switch between substrates very easily. But generally speaking, people are not living their or being their best self when they're nutritionally inadequate, or they're in a nutritionally inadequate environment, So do you have anything to say on performance there, Gary?
Yeah, performance is obviously something that's huge. And I think, again, what you need to do here is ask yourself, right, what are the performance domains that actually matter for my life? Because we all might say like, oh, I want better cognitive performance, but, for what exactly? Like, for example, if you're a student or you're someone who works in a very cognitively demanding job, then you can specify, much more specifically. Like, it might be, at the moment, I can't read for longer than 20 minutes because I get distracted. Or at the moment when I'm studying, I find myself needing music and that compromises my memory, and all these different things that are potentially getting in the way of your cognitive performance. So look for those holes, look for those holes in your current practices and in your current abilities, because there are differences between, attention or focus, and then your memory, and even more basic things like just committing the time to doing the cognitive tasks. So you need to specify that a bit further yourself. Obviously, the specifics of cognitive performance are beyond the scope of this podcast, but
we'll probably do podcast
yeah,
series on cognitive performance in future. But for now, yeah, it's beyond the scope.
Yeah, don't just leave it as like, yeah, I want to, study more, or I want to, get more out of my study. Like, what does that actually mean? What does it look like? And how are you going to achieve it? Okay. I know this is a bit of a repetitive theme. I'm constantly saying you need to specify, but you really do if you want to get the most
and this, just on that, like we're going to set exactly, here's the framework. In 1 second, we're going to go through the exact framework that you go through. But again, Gary's repeating things and I'm repeating things because that's the stuff you need to do.
Yeah. And then the other thing, I suppose, just with reference to performance, is like the importance of performing that needs analysis from a sporting perspective. So if you do play a sport in particular, like, don't just leave it as, I want to improve my performance on the pitch. You want to be able to do a specific needs analysis of what the components of fitness are that are relevant to that sport, and then what's letting you down. Because I've had this conversation a number of times this week when planning with clients for the new year, where I don't just want them to tell me, I want to get better at football, or I want to get better at, I don't know, some sort of martial art or something. I want them to tell me what's actually stopping you from being that next level. Because what you do if your deficit is speed and acceleration is different to what you would do if your deficit is, strength or power on the pitch, or your repeated sprint ability, or your endurance, etc. So you do need to break that down further if you want to be able to make that a specific goal. So,
and again, often that can be very hard. And that's like, we do that as in our coaching practice. Like, we might get them to send on like heart rate data, or, you go, oh, we're going to do repeated sprints out here like you would do on the field or whatever. And we're looking at that heart rate data, for example. We might be like, all right, you do repeated sprints here, but your heart rate stays up at fucking 160 in between these sprints. So we're going, okay, we can use that. We can go, okay, well, we want to be able to have a much better heart rate recovery rate. And that's what we're going to focus on. Now, obviously, again, this is the coaching process. And it comes back to that kind of thing that we said earlier on, where it's like, you have to be aware of what your limitations are. And I'm going to repeat that in a second, where you might not know how to work on certain things. Like, you might be looking to achieve a specific goal, and you might be like, that's the specific goal. And when we go through the framework in a second, in terms of breaking that down, like, you might be like, I actually don't know how to achieve this. I don't have the capacity or the skills right now to know what to do next. Like, okay, I have my specific goal. I know exactly what I want to work on, but I don't know how to work on it. And this is where, you might have to further educate yourself. You might have to, again, lay that groundwork, or you might just have to outsource. Like what a lot of our clients do. They're like, I know I need to work on this thing. I don't know how to work on it. So I'm outsourcing to you guys so you can tell me how to work on it. And then you can educate me so that I don't need you in the future. That's a large part of our coaching process. It's that education process where we get you to a stage where you simply don't need us anymore. You can just go, yeah, I know how to work on this, whatever it is. I'm done. We also do some like consulting and stuff with different coaches and whatever, where they might be like, I know how to get great results in terms of body composition, but I don't know how to get great results in terms of strength acquisition or whatever it is. And we're like, okay, well, these are the processes. And again, you might need to look out for mentors. You might need to look out for basically the process stuff. And we'll go through the framework in a second with that.
Check. I think we can move on to the process.